Being of a very rational, scientific mind, how are you able to reconcile the discrepancies between the creation story and the commonly accepted scientific facts about the origin of the earth and the universe?
Yeah, see, I don't see any problem there. To be honest with you, there's only a problem if you, A, take Genesis 1 as an exhaustive account of creation, and 2, take it all as a literal exhaustive account of creation. The days were 24 hours and things of that sort. Now you've got a major problem. And on top of that, you take the genealogies in Genesis as being exhaustive and literal. And that's how they date the earth. You know, they add up all the numbers of the genealogies. I don't regard any of those assumptions as being accurate. I don't think the genealogies at all were meant to be exhaustive. Knowing what we know about ancient genealogies, they usually just recorded the important people for whatever purposes that they were communicating with the genealogy. For example, if you read the beginning of Matthew, it says, Jesus, son of David, son of Adam. Well, they left out a couple people there, didn't they? But if that's the only genealogy you'd had, you'd think that, there was only 2 generations of people before Jesus existed. So I wouldn't leverage a whole lot on those genealogies. And with regard to the Genesis, the church has always had different ways of interpreting that. How literal is it? How figurative is it? How exhaustive is it? For my 2 cents, I'm most persuaded by the view, though I wouldn't die for this. This is just my opinion. There's other ways of reconciling it with science that maybe are even more plausible to some. But I see there to be a gap between verse 1 and verse 2. In the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth. And then in verse 2, it says, and the earth was, or could be interpreted, and the earth became, tohu wabohu is the Hebrew, which means formless and void. And those terms are usually pejorative terms, negative terms. When they're used together in Jeremiah 4, it refers to the state of a land after it was destroyed. And it's a wasteland. And so for a variety of reasons, I talk about this in the book God at War and also in the book Satan and the Problem of Evil, there's, I think, billions of years between verse 1 and verse 2. And between verse 1 and verse 2, I think things went astray, things got screwed up. That's why, I got to watch myself here, I could go down a long track. Okay, I'm going to make this 30 seconds. Genesis 1 isn't the only creation account in the Bible. There's at least 16 others. They're usually just 1 or 2 verses. I talk about this in God at War. But most scholars regard these verses as being creation accounts. And what's interesting is that all of those other creation accounts involve something like warfare. God rebuking the waters. God slaying Rahab or Leviathan, if you read them in terms of their cultural context. So the real question is, how do you integrate these other creation passages with Genesis 1? Well, I argue that the way to integrate them is to suppose that between the original creation and what we find in Genesis 1 was some kind of an angelic fall and some kind of all-out warfare, and then the earth was judged, and then God starts over. And that brings us to where we're at today. After that, you can interpret the Genesis as literal or as figurative. It doesn't matter. But you've got a space there to account for the age of the earth and the geological record and the paleontological record and all the rest.